Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Ask, Don't Tell, where we bring you the big boys, the champions, the rock stars, the rock women, the amazing women, or whoever it may be on the show that helps you become better at sales, at business, at life by becoming better at sales, really, and being able to really get others to say yes to your product, your services, your ideas. And today, I have one of those. Jake Stahl. I'm not even going to try to butcher here, Jake, and what you're doing and stuff, because I'm so excited to have you on the show, because I feel that some of the things that we're teaching and saying are a little bit similar, but you're going to come with it from a different angle. So I'm excited. Jake, welcome to the show.
Oscar, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, so it's really cool to be here.
All right, Jake, let's just get started. All right. So, always usually my first question is like, why do people come to Jake? How do you help them?
Well, here's what happens, Oscar, is I'm a firm believer people have two profiles. They have the one they dress and they comb its hair and they put a smile on it to make it polite and show the world. But there's a second profile. It's the one that makes all the decisions. It's the one that responds to fear and loss and happiness. And that's the one that really makes the decisions. So what I help both salespeople and founders and companies do is talk to the decision maker piece of the prospect that they're talking to. Because too often we get caught up in talking to that piece of the prospect that's giving objections and saying, I'll get back to you later. And they're not talking to the part that says, hey, Oscar, I need your product. I need you to give me a reason why.
Okay.
So I teach people how to talk to that second profile.
Okay. So, and I hear this all the time in trainings, why is the process not moving forward? Well, we can't talk kind of to this decision maker, or I'm getting stalls in the process isn't moving forward. So tell us a little bit about, I'd love to just get into that. By doing that, you're talking about several things there. You're talking about emotion. Like at the end of the day, whoever's stalling and not giving you access to that decision maker is probably not doing it because there's not an emotion there to get you there. And then when you get to that decision maker, if you're just talking numbers and widgets, and those people don't make decisions like that. So tell us a little bit about your framework. Like, how do you make this happen?
Yeah, so I teach a process called STRATA. It's an acronym, and it stands for signal, trigger, reframe, anchor, transfer, and action. So basically what's saying, Oscar, is we often don't even talk to the decision maker when we're talking to the people getting us to the decision maker, because they have so many things going through their head as a gatekeeper. If I put this person through, am I going to get in trouble? Is this person worth my time? Is this person going to help me or make me look bad? Instead, we're focusing on, hey, listen, can I talk to Sally? She's the one who really makes the decisions there. So what's the best way for me to bypass you? All of us, Oscar, have that hidden decision maker inside of us, right? Here's a great example. If you go to buy a car, most people will show the excited you and things like that, but they're not showing the side of them that's afraid of the price tag, that needs a lower price, that wants a lower monthly payment. And if the car salesperson isn't speaking to that decision maker, they're not going to make the sale.
Okay. All right.
That makes sense?
That makes total sense. So let's kind of start unpacking it, because there's so much in this. I mean, there is, a lot of times I talk about shortening the sales cycle. Well, if you shorten the sales cycle, it's because you get to the right person. All right. So let's kind of take this step by step. All right. Let's say you do have Sally.
Okay.
What are some of the tools and techniques, strategies that you use to build the emotion, or to help Sally get to yes to giving you the point? Is it just bypassing her entirely? Or is your system have a way of, all right, you're going to deal with Sally, but this is how you're going to deal with Sally?
So you're going to love this answer, because this is exactly what you teach. Okay? When you first get on the phone, listen. Don't make the first 2 to 5 minutes about you. Make it about them. But the first part of my process, Oscar, is watching for signals. What are they telling you versus what they're showing you? And I'll give you a great example. I was just on the phone with a man and a woman decision makers the other day. And I said to the woman very genuinely, I said, I like your glasses. Immediately, She started twirling her wedding ring and taking it on and off. That's a signal. I struck a nerve. I didn't mean to. It was just a compliment. But a normal salesperson would not acknowledge that, and they'd keep moving. Instead, you need to acknowledge the trigger you just hit, and you need to get them back on track again. Because we all make those mistakes, Oscar, right? We all push too hard and too fast. But if in the beginning, I can just listen to both what they're saying and what their body's saying, getting them to yes gets incrementally easier.
Awesome. Okay, so we're talking about we're talking about the human skills that you're going to use to connect with that person. Again, goes back to 101. They want to do business and help those people that are helping them or being genuine and caring about them. You're talking about taking an interest in them. I mean, it's all the tools of a really successful salesperson, like, closer. So take us a little bit through that. Okay, you've got someone in the way, right? And to connect with them, and I agree. Sometimes saying as simple as, "Hey, that's a pretty necklace," it just puts you in a different place, and it could be more than anything else you do. Or just taking a couple minutes to acknowledge something outside of this business interaction. That's rapport, obviously. But like when you teach, I mean, people have to say, "Okay, give me some." Okay, I get it. I get the listening, and I'm challenging here, Jake.
I appreciate it. Lay it out there.
Because I want our listeners to get more than the theory and like the actual, okay, what could I take home today? Yes, I get it. Okay, I have to get them to listen. I have to pay attention to these little things. I have to give them attention to these cues. But how do I do that? What are some techniques, some tools, some training that you could give us on how do we do that? I'm intrigued as well, by the way. I love what you're saying. I want to learn from you.
Part of it, Oscar, is just acknowledging that you saw a shift. So let me give you an example. You're giving a sales presentation. A person is sitting there listening to you, and you see them lean back in their chair. Most of the time, we take that as benign, right? It doesn't mean anything. They just shifted. But does it hurt to ask the question, "Hey, it seems like that might have just struck something. What are you thinking right now?" Because it's very rare that a body motion is something that's not being reflected of something internally. Somebody starts tapping a pen. Somebody starts fidgeting with a wedding ring. You've struck something. Most salespeople will ignore that. My process is acknowledge it. So I saw you start to tap your pen. It feels like I hit something. Tell me what's going through your head.
Wow, that's
Acknowledge
powerful.
it instead of overriding it. 80% of communication is nonverbal, and yet we ignore it 99% of the time.
That's good stuff. All right, so why did I tap my pen? I'll tell you why I tap it. Because one of the things that I do whenever I'm selling, if I'm actually the one doing the selling, I'm doing what you're saying, but I do it I always say, you've heard me say, like, I believe one of my gifts is kind of reading people, reading hearts. But it's just a gift. How you teach that to others is something that, wow, it's like, wow, that's powerful. Because, I teach you the communication and the listening and the skills and the closing. You've heard the podcast. But what you're describing actually goes to my second why. Like, what's your solution? Why is this different? This is actually different than most of the solutions that I'm going to teach you how to sell. You're saying, I'm going to teach you how to read people. And so the reason besides all that I just told you, one of the reasons I was having, well, how did he learn this? Where did he get this? So let's go back a little bit. You didn't just make this up. So what's a little bit of your background? I mean, because is it Voss that writes Never Split the Difference? He was an FBI agent, and that's why he got all this stuff. What brought you to this specific solution of teaching people how to read people?
Okay, so this is kind of the hard luck part of the story. This all came pretty natural. My upbringing was different than most. I had to learn to read people who were my caretakers. I had to learn to read them in order to judge reactions ahead of time. But about 15 years ago, Oscar, I became addicted to opioids after a third surgery. Couldn't get off them, went through a 2-year spiral. And when I came out of that spiral, when I went into recovery, I wanted to get back what I had, and I didn't know how. I had to reteach myself. So I started doing everything I could: psychology, neurolinguistic programming, social psychology. How did I do it before? Because I felt like I lost that. And when I re-taught myself, I actually turned it into a simple process called STRATA, which I described earlier, and I started to practice it again. Because one thing I found, and here was the weird thing, Oscar, people looked at me as an addict, as somebody who had a problem, who was dysfunctional. And yet, if somebody in Hollywood got addicted, it was poor them. How could this have happened? I'm really feeling sorry for them. And I got thinking to myself, it's not me, it's my presence. It's how I'm coming across. So, how do I change that? And how do I read people who are viewing that? And thus, this process was born. It wasn't a business decision, this was a survival decision. I'm 13 years clean, and my business is bigger and better and stronger than ever. Long list of clients. I have a SaaS product out. I'm writing a book. It was a turning point in my life, and it made this possible.
All right. So if you're listening to the show right now, there's a huge teaching opportunity here. Like when I asked you that question, I saw a shift.
Yeah.
Because you were going to have to speak from the heart.
Yes.
And
Correct.
you just did.
Yes.
And if you're listening to the show, I don't know if you noticed that, but he went from here, you can't see this, from the head to the heart. And his a little bit of tone kind of shift. But that was powerful because it teaches us two things. And I don't want to ignore kind of what you said. I'm going to get there, but it teaches us something really important. I could have not asked that question, by the way. I knew there was something there because I could read there was something there because I'm listening and saying, okay, he didn't just come up to this. Something had to have happened, that made him go this direction. And I could have not asked the question, but I did. And here goes. I got something so powerful from you, Jake, about your life, about, your journey, about why you're doing, like, we've connected.
Yes.
And that is so powerful as a business person, as a salesperson, as a closer, whatever you want to call it. Those questions you're afraid to ask or that you could not ask because it could become uncomfortable are the ones that are going to make anything more successful. And this podcast is now more successful because you've opened up to a simple question of tell us a little bit more about that. So going back to what you said, it makes me think a little bit about a lot of the people that I talk to were at one point the person that they're teaching people not to be. So for example, me, I used to be that salesperson that talked. You're looking at me like, when is this guy going to shut up? So one day I step back and say, how can I turn my closing rates from 30, 50, 60, like how can I just have extraordinary closing rates? It's, hey, step back and learn what it is that people need. And that's really what you just described is I learned what was missing that made people want to like really just, react to you, want to do business with you and buy your books and buy your program. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I can't even tell you how much. Okay. All right. So now so you actually 100% answer the question, why Jake Stahl? I mean, I don't have anything else for you. All right. So let's move on.
Nothing teaches you a great lesson like losing your house and your savings and your marriage. Those are great lessons.
Yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. All right. So let's go back to Sally. Let's go back because we could get stuck in that story for a whole next 15 minutes. I don't want to do that. All right.
Back to Sally.
So let's go back to Sally. All right. So with Sally, you're teaching people how to ask probably the right questions, how to connect with the heart a little bit, because it also how to read those cues, even on the phone. It's all that. Okay, you get past Sally, you finally make it to the decision maker. Is it the same kind of strategy? Or what about your solution changes as you talk to the actual decision maker?
It's the same strategy. And Oscar, this is, I think, where a lot of salespeople go astray, is they think that they have to change their approach. I've coached so many sales reps who get on with a gatekeeper and they're a completely different person than when they get on with a decision maker. But the reality is they're both humans. They both process the exact same way. They both think the exact same way, just with different endpoints in mind. So our process should remain the same. And Oscar, one thing you talk about quite a bit, which I thoroughly love, is asking questions and getting them involved. And did you know that they have proven conclusively that when you let someone talk about themselves and you let them share about themselves, it is chemically equivalent to them eating a chocolate cupcake? Same neurotransmitters fire, same dopamine kicks off. But here's what happens. If you feel good talking to me, you don't feel good about the conversation. You wind up feeling good about me, and you associate feeling good with me. So if I can get that bond to happen quickly and easily, the rest of it gets exponentially easier to deal with. So I never talk about selling. A lot of people use the word selling. I talk about crafting the perfect conversation. That's all you're doing, is you are crafting a conversation where the end goal is a given. You don't have to ask for it. It's just a given. And that's not that hard a process to do.
Right. What are your thoughts on, for example, I mean, I'm always saying like, there should never be a pitch. There should never be a presentation. It's really a conversation. What is your perspective when you hear me say something about like, oh, passing a PowerPoint presentation or bringing props or, going straight into the pitch tell me a little bit about what your solution teaches about that.
So my solution it works great with owning the room, reading the room, understanding people in the room. But Oscar, as I think you already know, depending on who's in the room is going to depend on how you approach it. You get a room full of accountants, you're going to want to use numbers and PowerPoint slides and things like that. You get in front of a clown convention, it's okay to bring in 32 props and hand out toys. So it all depends on the audience that you're standing in front of when you're doing a training session. And it's knowing who you're talking to in advance. I'm amazed in this day and age of GPT and the web and every place that you can do research that a person will spend a half hour looking for a cat video they loved a year ago, but they won't take 5 minutes to look at a prospect before they get on the phone.
Right. So, I mean, then you hit on something powerful, because a lot of salespeople go out and they have the same pitch, the same presentation, the same style for every audience. And
right.
You stepped back and said, and I loved it, you said, it depends on the audience, but what you're really talking about is a little bit about rapport. Like if you do a little bit of research,
yes,
and you understand who you're talking to, and you have rapport, like let's say that person is addicted to golf. Well, heck, maybe the night before you take 10 minutes to see what's going on in the golfing world.
correct.
So that you can have a golf conversation. And that's a little bit about what you're talking about. Like there's structure to have those conversations, but there's not scripts. Is that correct, Jake?
Oh my God, Oscar, you just became my favorite person ever. I hate scripts so much. If a company has a script, the first thing we do is we get rid of it. I think scripts are great in the beginning as you get your feet wet in a process. But if you're still relying on scripts even 2 weeks later, you're completely missing the boat. I had a leaf guard sales guy out to my house the other week, and he insisted on going through all 32 pages of his brochure step by step, because that's how the company tells him to do it. And then when they have a close rate of only 10 or 20%, they wonder why that is. Well, only 10 or 20% like you walking through 32 pages of a sales brochure.
It's funny what you say about scripts, because so when I get hired by companies, they always want me to, look at their script and redo their script. And I'll do that, because what I'll do is I'll turn their script into a structure. Or so I'll say, okay, this part is your intent statement. This part is your discovery, this part. And then when we do the trainings, I'll say, and I'll say this, and I'll get different kinds of, like, this is a script, but it's not what you need to say. It's a structure to be used by smart people.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So you can take scripting into structure, but I'm all with you. Like a script says every human being is the same. So you're going to get what I call, the same closing rate that anybody else gets using the same structure to the same people. So if your company's had a 10% closing rate using that script, that's what you're going to get. Right now, if you use the structure, you might get 30% because you're now turning that script into a conversation. So awesome stuff that you're saying there. All right. Get me wrong. I mean, in the research I did online and ChatGPT, it's, I love it. I mean, I live on ChatGPT, but sometimes it gives me wrong information. So are you the one that came up with the 210 rule?
Yes, my
Okay.
210 rule.
Tell
Yep.
me about the 210 rule.
Sure. So the 210 rule goes by the fact that when a person speaks, for every 10 minutes they present, they generate 2 minutes worth of questions. So for every 10 minutes you're talking to somebody, Oscar, they're coming up with about 2 minutes worth of questions. It's just a rule of thumb.
All right.
The 210 rule says turn that around. So if I'm giving a presentation, if every 2 minutes I check in with you, hey, Oscar, how does that sound? Hey, Oscar, are we on the right track with this? Hey, Oscar, does this make sense for your business? If I do that every 2 minutes and just make sure you're with me, and at the end of every 10 minutes, regroup. So, Oscar, I've been blabbing for 10 minutes straight. I just want to make sure I didn't lose you anywhere. Do you have any questions we should hit right away? If I do that, Oscar, I do some really cool things. First, it forces me to listen intently. If I'm going to repeat stuff back or ask good questions, I've got to be listening. Second is it shows them I'm listening and I'm engaged. Third, it draws out any questions they have while we're going along versus waiting till the end when either A, they think I really want to get off the phone, or B, I forgot what I was going to ask anyway, and it guides the process. Oscar, I've turned around complete sales teams by having them all get stopwatches and do this, and their communication and rapport with their customers builds exponentially. I do this with my wife, my kids. It's just a simple process that you get used to doing. You keep people involved. And then the advanced course, Oscar, is instead of checking in with, does that make sense? You check in with an empathetic statement.
Wow. That's really, I mean, I love that rule. I thought you were going to say something different. But what you said was super powerful. I mean, because my role is a little bit like, you got to do 80% of the listening and asking the questions and 20% of the talking. You're turning around and saying, hey, when you are talking, because at some point, it doesn't matter how many questions you ask.
Yes.
And I'm guilty of this. And everyone listening to this is guilty of this if they've been in sales or a business. Like, you can ask all the questions you want, but at some point you're gonna have to provide the benefit.
Correct.
That
you
benefit,
have to tell. Exactly.
Yeah, you have to tell. That benefit sometimes, if you're super succinct and you understand the structure, you can do it in 2 minutes. Hey, the benefit to you is this, you're ready to get started. Literally. But the flaw or the part to train is that most of us at that point will go on a 10-minute rant. So your strategy there of, if I do that, I'm literally grabbing what you said and reapplying it to like the world. If you do that, and you stop yourself every so minute to check in, you actually might stop yourself from doing that. You see what I'm saying? So it's super powerful, because if I don't stop myself, I'm going to check in. But by saying I'm going to check in, I'm actually going to stop myself from the rant. And we've all been there.
Exactly. Yep. Oh my God. Yeah. I did it all the time. Yeah. The 210 rule really is powerful when you're speaking, because it really gets you into a rhythm. And I've had reps that use a stopwatch for like a day or two, and then they're like, I've got this. And their whole conversation changes so dramatically, it's like a new person.
All right. So in case people miss that, because I think it's a very powerful rule, okay, in the simplest words possible, like if someone's listening, okay, how do I apply the 210 rule today?
Sure.
Simplest words possible.
I'm presenting. Every 2 minutes, I check in.
Awesome.
Does that make sense? Would you be able to use this? Does this apply to what we're talking about? Right? 3 possible check-ins. At the end of 10 minutes, it's, Oscar, I have blabbed for 10 minutes straight. I want to make sure we're together on this. Do you have any questions on what we covered so far?
There are so many sales, Jake, that are going to be made today because of this show.
I agree.
There are so many people driving to work or whatever you're doing, or you've got a call at 6 p.m. If you listen to what we're telling you, there are so many sales that are going to be made today. All right, so let's go into this is where it starts getting interesting, Jake, because okay, I can connect with the other person as much as I want. I can become their best friend. I can ask the question. I know you know where I'm going. I can ask them the questions. I can, but at some point I have to ask for a decision. And doesn't matter who you are, how good you are. Objections are part of the process. They're going to give you a stall, an excuse, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you teach in your process a specific skill, tactic, strategy for handling objections? How do you view them?
Yeah. So one thing I teach all the time, Oscar, and I've heard you talk about on your show as well, is empathetic statements. Not empathetic questions, empathetic statements. So if somebody says, hey, Oscar, listen, I love what you're saying, but the price is just outside our budget. It's so easy for a salesperson to start justifying the price. Well, this is why it's so high. My encouragement for my clients is turn it around and say, it sounds like budget is the biggest concern for you. Are there any others? And what happens 8, 9 times out of 10 is they're going to say, yeah, budget's a huge concern, Oscar, because I want to hire new people. So now I'm getting to the real juice of the matter.
Yeah. Right.
So it sounds like, Oscar, you haven't hired new people in a while and you need them. Yeah, it's been 5 years since that's happened. We get so focused on asking delving discovery questions when in reality, a lot of times it could be solved by giving them more room to run. So one of the big things I teach is empathetically rephrase what they're saying and feed it back. And then, and this is alien to most salespeople, but then use silence. Shut up. And let them come back.
Go ahead. No, I don't want to stop you. Keep going.
Yep. No, you're good.
Okay. So I think what you just described is, there's so many different ways to handle objections, but I think the one that you just mentioned, which is very similar to the one, you're right, is the one you can take home today from anything else I think we could teach you. Like the one you could take home today that's going to make a difference most often. Because what Jake is really saying, I use different words, but we're saying the same thing. He's acknowledging the objection, the excuse, the stall. It could just be an excuse. He's being empathetic, but look at what he asked. I see that the budget is a concern. Is there anything else? He's inviting you. He's kind of putting the budget aside a little bit and saying, tell me more. And so it goes back to ask, don't tell. Like you can't pitch, you can't power through, you can't bully people, you can't say you got to do this today. Hey, I've got a better deal for you. Hey, let me bring out my manager. Hey, let me bring out my third manager. None of that crap works. All right, like this is a clean show. Sorry, none of that stuff works. But just acknowledging people, like just acknowledging people and say, hey, I'm with you with this. Okay. Besides that, what else? And then, Jake, you're right. What people will tell you against the questions you're afraid to ask are the ones that are going to cover the most. And then they're going to tell you maybe what really is holding them back, and then you can address them. So let's say that does happen. How do you help them? How do you help them get past that? They're sitting on the wall. They're sitting on the fence. They've now told you, this is the real reason why I can't move forward. Do you have a way of helping people get past that?
Yeah, of course.
Fence into, okay, Jake, let's, maybe they're not 100% sure, but I'll say, okay, let's take this one step further. Yeah, let's how do you?
So one thing I'm a big fan of, Oscar, is reframes. So a great example is, let's say somebody has a diagnosis for an illness and the doctor says 50% of the people don't recover from this. The reframe of it is 50 people survive and live a long, healthy life, right? Exact same endpoint, just stated a different way. So when I get a customer that says, Jake, you know what? I really need your services, but it's expensive. It's not in the budget right now. One of my reframes is, how expensive will it be for you to be in this same position 2 months from now?
Right.
So all I'm doing is asking them to look at what happens if you don't do this. You're looking at the cost of paying for something. How much are you going to pay if you don't get a solution to your problem?
That is emotion 101, obviously. There's great questions that you can ask from that would be something like, so that's a pro. Like, what is it, when you ask someone, what's the biggest challenge? And then you say, okay, what have you done to solve that challenge? Okay, great. What is the cost of not solving that challenge, right? Like, that's like, oh man, you put them in a different perspective where their pain, what you're saying is their pain becomes more important than the cost, and super powerful. But you could use that same thing. Let me push you a little bit harder here. Give me another example of reframing that isn't with cost, right? Like maybe it's delay, maybe it's time, maybe it's my board, maybe it's, how could you reframe that when it isn't cost? Because cost is a little bit easier, but I know you're a pro.
Yeah.
But give me something from a different angle.
Okay. So another one may be, I'm not going to make a decision until next quarter, right? It's one we hear all the time. I'll push this off until next quarter. So I can understand that you want to push it off till next quarter, but you're in the position you are because you can make these evolutionary decisions. So what does it look like to be next quarter with your staff happier, that raise that went through that you were looking for, with lower turnaround times on your calls, whatever the benefit is going to be of your sale? I do what's called future pacing. A great example of future pacing is a Royal Caribbean commercial. They never talk to you about having your passport ready and the 12-hour booking process and what it's going to look like to be in a cramped room. They sell you at the dinner table or on a water slide or on a Caribbean beach. So if I need somebody to look at the future of what it'll be like with my product, I paint that picture.
Wow. Wow. So gosh, I want to make sure that our audience got that in different terms, like not repeating what you said, but what you're pointing to, Jake, is, I mean, what you just said is so powerful. And if you use it, go use it today because it will work. This stuff that Jake's using, I use it all the time. Pros use it. It will work. Like, don't even think about it. It will work. And here's the thing, when you use it, you're going to kind of be laughing internally at yourself saying, gosh, that actually worked. But here's what I want you to understand, the reason that it works. Because the reason it works is, in a way, human beings are a little bit, they're a little bit greedy. They're a little bit selfish in reality. So what you're saying there, Jake, is that person's no longer thinking about the money and the cost and the time. They're thinking about what's in it for me. How does that motivate me? How does this benefit me? Me. Because in theory, I say ask, don't tell, but we live in a me-tell world. And so what Jake is saying is, when you ask these powerful questions, going back to everything we've learned, when you ask powerful questions, when you reframe with powerful questions towards them, where you reframe the negative into the positive and then future pace to them, and they see, here's the word, the benefit and the value in their lives, they are probably, most likely, and many times often, going to say yes. Because for most people, staying where you are and dragging on the sales cycle and having another salesperson come in the door and going through the whole process again is simply not an option if you can show them that what you're going to do is actually going to create the impact. That's amazing, Jake. That's great.
Yeah, and if we could just talk about one subject real quick. I firmly believe that when you're doing your business development or when you're doing your selling, you need to keep the big three in mind. And they're the big three that affect everybody on the planet: perception, conditioning, and coding. How they perceive you and how you perceive them. How they're coded to respond. Like if they hear a high price tag, oh, I can't do that right now. Next quarter, can't afford it. Have to talk to my partner. They're conditioned to come up with a response. And then the third part is, how are we coded? How do most people respond in those situations? If you take the big three into account every time you make a call or make a presentation, you are going to be far, far more successful.
Right.
Far. It's not even close.
All right. So I'm going to give you a chance to, in a second, point people in the direction that you want to get to know you. But I want to address something really important here. When we first started this conversation, this is how I know you're a pro, Jake. Okay. Because I get a lot of people on the show that say, oh, I have this. No, seriously, this is why people come for me to help. The first why. Then this is the solution that I provide. The second why. Then this is why me, the third why. And this is the action I need them to take. But as I move them forward to that, or especially when they're doing, like, if they say they're doing sales training or they're helping people, redo like their whole, I don't know, customer engagement, where you call it, they're very one-sided in, oh, I'm going to help you like communicate better. But reality, if you see what we started about first to begin about reading people better. That's huge. That's huge, right? There's a lot of business training out there that will not teach you that. But then I challenged you and I said, okay, yes, but in the sales cycle, it's not just about the connecting at the beginning. You're always selling, always closing. It's a long sales cycle. You got to have that connection the whole way. But at some point, you got to get people to say yes. You got to give them the move forward. And then you showed that you're also a pro in that. You see what I'm saying? In getting people to actually make those decisions and take action that's going to change their life. So that lets me know that you really do. I mean, you talk the talk, you walk the walk. Like you've been there, you know it, and you know how to do it. And that just means that you're a total pro. And so if you were listening today, I think that you really could get a lot from what Jake is talking about. And if you are Apple Computer and you're thinking of hiring a sales trainer, hire both of us. No, because you fill in a lot of gaps, honestly, that I actually don't address. And I'm sure that it goes both ways. So
I'm sure it does.
Good stuff. All right. What do you want people to what's the action step you want people to take today? What they, why today? If they want to resonate with Jake, if they want to get to know you a little bit more, what's the action step you want them to take today?
So there's a couple of things. The first is you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I live. So you can find me at Jake Stahl on LinkedIn. So you can find me better because there's a lot of Jake Stahls out there. I'm the CEO of Orchestrate. I actually created a SaaS product that does this very thing. So you can find me as the CEO of Orchestrate. Just as an FYI, I also have a book coming out on the process that I teach that will be coming out towards December. It's called Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected.
Awesome. Awesome. Great stuff. So we're looking forward to that book. Go out and find a little bit more about the software. It's a software, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And Orchestrate is ORCHESTRAIGHT because it's the straightest line to success.
All right. Well, you heard it here on Ask Don't Tell. We had a super pro today. Thank you, Jake, for being on the show. If you do work for Apple and you heard me say Apple computers, I apologize. I know that you're just Apple. But at the end of the day, we did have a pro here today. And Jake, thank you. For those of you that love listening to Ask Don't Tell, check us out next time on Ask Don't Tell. You can always connect with me on OscarSuberance.com, ClosingIntelligence.com, or just pick up a copy of Closing Intelligence. Thank you, Jake. Stay on the line and we'll keep chatting.
Thanks, Oscar.